Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, 3 straight wins, a little bit of a changing identity, and a much-needed prove-it moment. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this late Sunday, early Monday. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Moment of the game, 120 to 113. The Phoenix Suns beat the Charlotte Hornets. Ben is off today. I am here with you, and I will get right to it. The Suns were down, believe it or not, although it's not so hard to believe because this game made you pull your hair out up until the very moment when the Suns were able to win it. They were down 7 at the 5-minute and 39-second mark, right? And Kevin Durant got his 5th foul at that moment, which is easy to forget when he doesn't actually foul out, but obviously in that spot, you really never know. But down 7, and they closed the game on a 19-5 run, okay? And so this was a lot of things at once, right? Right before that, Oso and Royce had come into the game. Now, they basically were the ones to close over Ryan Dunn. And so not quite small, but obviously no Plumlee and Royce in there instead of Dunn, and no Tyus Jones, which we will get to at the end of this show. But really what I think that this stretch showed, because a lot of things had kind of gone against the Suns, right? Mark Williams had a huge first half that pumped up the Charlotte offensive rebounding totals. Hornets had some big threes from LaMelo, from Brandon Miller. It felt like Miles Bridges was starting to cook down the stretch of this game. On the Suns side, Grayson Allen has to rest for the second half. And I mentioned Tyus already, not a strong game for him. Plumlee continues to have a often just as frustrating stretches as Jusuf Nurkic did, just completely unable to make a layup and fouls and all sorts of things. It felt like this game was going to be another one that went sideways for the Suns. And instead, they close on this 19-5 run where, first of all, it is the first comeback that I think you would say this team has really had in legitimately more than 2 months, because frankly, they just have not won a lot of games. They beat the Lakers in late November. They beat the Warriors and the Spurs right after that. A couple weeks later, they beat the Jazz and the Blazers. Obviously, Nuggets on Christmas. They had the one win against Philly, which I guess that was somewhat of a tight game, but it was really a big third quarter that kind of led the way there. Utah, Atlanta, a little bit of close matchups, but not a comeback. In this case, they really did it. They had not come back since the very last win to put them at 8-1 on November 8th. If you remember that game, it was the Jusuf Nurkic late scoring to put the Suns up, but I believe they were down 6 or 7 halfway through that fourth quarter. Very similar situation here, but that was 2 months ago. So the Suns, the Nuggets game was nice. That the game against Philly, sure, great, but this one was something different. This was them having to. You can get mad that it was the Hornets. Yes, they shouldn't be down, but it still says something to be able to come back in this league against anybody, especially when you've been struggling as much as the Suns have. And it was the encapsulation of what a comeback kind of needs to include here, right? Like, it wasn't just that the Hornets lost this game. The Suns really took it. They had multiple forced turnovers, a block by Royce O'Neal on Brandon Miller, a forced traveling call against LaMelo Ball later on, a steal by Devin Booker on Mark Williams, multiple moments, speaking of Mark Williams, who had that monster first half where Booker and KD were able to take advantage of his mental lapses as an interior defender, and Oso Ighodaro took advantage of that. Great ball movement where they're really, again, continuing to capitalize on how the Hornets are playing them defensively. KD starting the, around the horn passing that leads to a big Royce three and a couple of other moments like that. It was the whole team coming together on both ends to string together a run. 19-5. You don't luck into that. You don't slip into that. You earn that. And the Suns absolutely did. And that is why it is the moment of the game. That's the kind of stretch that if you are a Suns fan, there was I think that third quarter in Philly was a great example. I think that really the whole second half against Atlanta, but, I think you would say especially that third quarter and the second half, well, really the whole game against Utah was pretty nice. But I would say the second half against Atlanta, the fourth quarter against Philly, those were nice moments. Obviously, great win against Denver. But because it's now 3 in a row, because they really had to kind of dig deep for this one, not just taking care of business, but coming back, it does start to, I think, feel like a possible momentum shift for this one, for that reason, but also this reason. The way it happened, yes, but also the schedule. They're a little late to it. It sucks that they lost to, for instance, Memphis without their guys, in Indiana, and the first game against Charlotte earlier this week. But this January schedule, if the Suns are going to have any chance at making something out of this season, they need to clean up in this stretch of games in January. They're about to head on a long road trip, but the teams are beatable outside of Cleveland. They're all 500 or worse teams. Charlotte at home, Utah at home, Atlanta at home. These are games you have to win. And because the Suns did, and the way they did it, I think you at least start to feel like all hope is not lost. And we can see if they can build on this. That fourth quarter was not just interesting because it was a comeback and showed some energy and effort on the part of the Suns. It was also interesting because of who was on the court. We'll get there next. First, today's show is brought to you by Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach, the game that is taking the Locked On Podcast Network by storm. Yeah, we have a bunch of hoops heads on the NBA and college basketball side of things with our podcasts, but in Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach, you control every detail of your program, from recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, overseeing training camp, NIL deals, managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. So if you love basketball, if you love sports, this game's for you. And when it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays, set your strategy, and shape the future of your school's basketball program one game at a time. College Basketball Ultimate Head Coach is a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. If you're hyped up about Bryce James heading to Tucson, well, maybe try your hand at building a program and doing even better. No, they're not the exact same players in the real world, but the challenge is just the same. It's a special offer right now for Locked On NBA listeners who are thinking about trying it out. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program once you download the game. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career in Ultimate Basketball Head Coach. So download the app or visit ultimate-cbb.com to check it out. Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode, guys, also brought to you by the Game Time app, the best place to buy any ticket. It's that time of year in Phoenix where we actually like to go out and do things and be outside and hang out with people because it's not a million degrees, whether it's sports, music, comedy, or theater. Check it out at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that filters out the fluff to show you only the best deals on the best seats so you don't have to waste time searching. threw a bunch of tickets all across the valley, across a bunch of different events. Let's see. We have the She Believes Cup at State Farm Stadium. And surprisingly, on Monday, when you're listening to this, if you're just really spur of the moment, there's an NFL playoff game happening here in the Valley that you can check out at Game Time with their Game Time Picks deals. It's going to be a very packed event, but if you want to get the best value possible, Game Time Picks has you covered for that, as well as everything throughout 2025. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's keep it rolling here. So, 120, 113, talked about the moment of the game. Let's get to my big lesson of today's game, which is really in that same second half, and that fourth quarter in particular. And I mentioned the effort, the energy, the kind of mentality and focus that's needed to execute that type of comeback. And that is all accurate. But I think who was on the court and the general way the Suns were playing is just as big of it's just as important. In this game, I mentioned the Suns lost Grayson Allen. He had an amazing first half. I'll even include him here, right? The most important players on the court tonight were Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, of course, Bradley Beal, who continues to make the most of reduced field goal attempts, but still a ton of minutes and a lot of opportunity, and he's playing well in this bench role, as well as Grayson, Royce O'Neal, and Oso Ighodaro, who basically, is a center of sorts, although, how they use him and his versatility is almost like playing small ball at times. And it has the same weaknesses when it comes to rebounding and everything else that small ball sometimes brings with it, but also the pros where Oso can switch. He can be mobile. He can, be a little bit more athletic and versatile, as I just said. So that is my lesson of the game. And to put a more finer point on it, the Suns are looking a whole heck of a lot like the team that they were last year. Now, yes, Mike Budenholzer, and I'll get to this in the last segment, is continuing to get this team, for instance, to take more threes, be a better transition offense. I think, be a less predictable and stagnant offense. Defensively, it's been there's been some growing pains, to say the least, but I would even say Bud trusting the young guys is something we didn't necessarily see in full capacity last season under Frank Vogel. But frankly, I always do that. I always end up saying frankly, and I'll go ahead and say pun intended. But frankly, I don't even think the comparisons need to be made. I always try to stay away from last season, this season, because Frank Vogel doesn't work here anymore, and it doesn't really matter how much similar it might be to that situation. But the point is, this year's team is realizing the same things that last year's team realized, right? Because, heck, we forget, technically this team did have a point guard on it last year. His name was Jordan Goodwin. He didn't really play very well, and he got shipped out for Royce O'Neal, but that happened. The Suns, could have run things exclusively through Jusuf Nurkic, and at times they did, just like at times now they're still running some stuff through Oso Ighodaro as a dribble handoff and a playmaker. But when the roster is built like this, it will go as far as the big three takes it on the offensive end. With the ball in their hands, with as much shooting and defense as you can put around it. And yes, if there's a center that comes along, and I'll probably talk with Ben tomorrow when he's back about the Nick Richards rumors, who coincidentally was on the other side of the court tonight in Charlotte. That's nice. It's not to say no more centers. It's not even to say no more point guards. There might be some world where that makes more sense. But right now, with how this team looks and the strengths and weaknesses of it, this is how this team is going to need to play. effort, energy, versatility on the defensive end. Every rebound's going to feel like a freaking war. The paint's going to feel exposed at all times. You are going to have to maybe fight, easy layups and dunks on occasion and putbacks with threes, and that's going to feel uncomfortable. And there's going to be some goofy turnovers, although they only had 12 tonight. Everything that sometimes feels frustrating about the Suns, it can't go away. It can't go away. It is built into what this team is. And right now, because Plumlee is not much better than Nurk, because Oso is undersized, because Nurk is unplayable and banished right now, that's even more of a weakness. At least last year, Nurk was playing pretty well for most of the season, and you could at least not worry about that, and you could go big and not be so worried about it so much. But the good thing is, when I say all of that, and I'm not even just saying that the bad things are true about this team. The other thing is that the Suns, they get the best out of Durant and Booker when they just embrace that, right? When there's less Tyus Jones and Monte Morris out there, although mostly the Tyus aspect of that, when the floor is spaced and there's no center. I mean, heck, like it was too little too late and barely even counts. But remember how good Book looked in that game 4 against Minnesota when Bud finally just said, to hell with it, I'm going to go ahead and just go 5 out here? Even that proved it. And tonight proved it again. 57 combined points, 13 combined assists, 2 turnovers. That is what Devin Booker and Kevin Durant did today. They also embraced the three ball, 6 of 15, 6 of 18. Not the most efficient night. Durant's jumper just wasn't there tonight. Not a big concern. And on top of that obviously very good aspect of the Suns playing like this, they also have more depth to do it this year because Oso is kind of this hybrid 4-5 where you can be versatile without being tiny, and he can be out there. And they have Ryan Dunn, who they did not have last year. I mean, last season, their options with some of these lineups, the guy in Dunn's place was Eric Gordon. I mean, come on. What are we talking about? You go with Dunn 11 times out of 10. And yeah, Bol, I guess, maybe played a factor in there, but not so much. And, a full season of Royce and everything else. So the Suns are better equipped to play this identity. They continually prove that they are at their best when they play with this identity. And games like this just prove it. So, no, I'm not saying don't trade for a center. I'm not saying don't improve the wing rotation, maybe even, upgrade one of those spots or consolidate it for a better guy or whatever. I'm not even saying that this is the best possible way to build around Booker and Durant. I'm certainly not saying that. All I am telling you is that tonight was a reminder. And frankly, a few of these games have been a reminder. The Atlanta game was a reminder. It was a pretty very similar game. A lot of Oso, a lot of offense from this team and enough timely defense to win it. I've been telling you guys that this is this team's identity. And unfortunately, adding Tyus Jones and a better backup center didn't change that. That's still this team's bread and butter and how they are going to be at their best. We can question if that best is good enough. We can question if that best needs to be changed. But that's true right now. And they just frankly need to win games. So I don't care about the hypotheticals in the future. I'll deal with that when that time comes. Right now, this is the best option, and it worked. Let's talk a little bit more about Tyus's minutes recently, before tonight and including tonight, as well as some of the big numbers from tonight's game next. First, today's show brought to you by a new sponsor at Open Phone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats, and your personal phone becomes your business phone. Before you know it, you're juggling customers all day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just that one personal number, and that's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. So for just $15 a month, the cost of, a few coffees, maybe just one, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA for $20 off 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over as well at no extra charge. Closing out the show here, 120-113, the Suns get their third straight win at home over the Charlotte Hornets, and I have a few numbers to get to with the closeout here, but I want to start with the bench mob vibe check, really just a look at the rotation, and I've talked a lot about the individual players here already, but there's one particular thing that I think we have to discuss, all right, which is Tyus Jones. Now, 18 minutes tonight, and I don't know if he played in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure that he did. He did for the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, and he did not see the court the rest of the game. This is a trend, right? It's not just tonight. Part of it is that Bradley Beal is now on the bench, so that means it just sort of changes the rotation, right? You want to keep Ryan Dunn in the game as much as possible because he's proving his value. Beal has been coming in for Dunn when he checks in, which is earlier and earlier, it feels like. Tonight it was at the 7.5-minute mark. Beal checked in for Dunn. But the next substitution, Grayson came in for Tyus. So Tyus only played 7 minutes in the first quarter, right? And then, you get back, you swing back around, and suddenly you're talking about, you want Dunn to close, you want Beal to close. It starts to be a little bit tough to find the room for everybody, especially when, frankly, the past few games, obviously it's easy to say this in a win, everybody's playing better, but I would even go so far as to say pretty much everybody that's not a center in this rotation is playing well, not even just better. So if everybody's playing well, the best total package players are going to rise to the top. That's somewhat of what we're looking at. But to be more specific, it's the defense. It just is, right? And that's why when I say the best total players, are there things that Tyus Jones does better than Grayson Allen, better than, frankly, Bradley Beal, frankly, even, of course, Ryan Dunn? Yes. I mean, Tyus is a better shooter than Dunn. He's a better passer than Grayson. He's a better passer than Beal. But when you take it all in total, NBA 2K ratings and stuff like that, I think Tyus would be lower than all those guys. Or maybe not Dunn, but we know what Dunn has that this team so sorely needs, which is size and athleticism and energy. And that's too valuable to put on the bench in favor of a point guard. When you couple that with the fact that, Tyus had a fairly killer turnover in that fourth quarter that got a lot of, people frustrated. And this season, he is let's see. I don't want to call it a career high because I don't have that in front of me, but he is averaging, a career high in turnovers per game. Now, he is playing a lot of minutes, but he is also at the highest turnover percentage since his third season in the NBA. So the whole idea of bringing Tyus Jones in was that, in these fourth quarter situations, he would be able to engineer and orchestrate the offense and play game manager quarterback for a team that just too often was playing slow and loose in these fourth quarters, and that Tyus could fix that. If he's not fixing that, and the pace thing that he was supposed to be part of the solution for just clearly is not going to be a big part of this team's identity ever with the way that it's constructed, and he is, a pushover on the defensive end because of his size and athleticism limitations, you just very quickly start to run out of reasons to have him on the court. And so when you have a better shooter, a better defender, a bigger player, all, begging to be on the court, that is what is going to happen. It's also, as I mentioned, been a trend. I'm not just overreacting to tonight. Since this team has at least had the big three healthy and made the lineup change, Tyus's minutes, the lineup change was starting Monday, right? So we have a whole week of it, 5 games. Tyus's minutes, 20, 22, 29, 26, and now 18, right? Like, that is a very clear drop-off from before where he was playing 30, 32, 24, 30, 23, 33, 26, 32, 32, 34. Like, Bud is telling us something, and the team's success, at least this week, backed it up. Let's close out with some numbers here. Box score oddities, as I like to call them. 41 threes for the Suns. And I just want to hammer this home. The Suns have continued. I should say this better. The best players on this team have continued to embrace the three ball this week. I don't have a great explanation for that. I was trying to ask KD about it today, but there's not always an easy way to break into a player's mindset on that granular of a level. They don't want to admit that maybe something else wasn't working, or they don't want to always have to say that they weren't listening to the coach. Now they are, whatever the case might be. I don't know, but it's clear. 18 combined threes for the big two today, Durant and Booker. Beal was only at 4, although he's been higher lately. Obviously, getting Royce back is a big help. And then Grayson took 6.5. I mean, if he had played this whole game, this number would have been even higher. And so it's like I mentioned in the past couple segments, it sometimes it's painful to sit there when this team is down or trying to make a big push and they're jacking threes, but that you're either in or you're out. And so big kudos to the best players on this team for embracing that shot. Book said he's been frustrated with himself missing so many threes lately. I believe on Tuesday he was 0 of 8. Is that right? Or recently he was, and he's been better the past few games. So that is all a good sign. The last thing I wanted to point out is the transition offense for the Suns. Now, Charles Lee, the coach of the Hornets, mentioned pregame that transition defense has been a big sticking point for the Hornets. And while the Suns only actually had 13 fast break points, which is less than what Charlotte had, what the Suns did do was convert Charlotte's turnovers into points. And so for the rare time that the Suns were able to turn their opponent over more than they coughed it up, they made full use of that. They got 26 points off of 16 Hornets turnovers, and that is massive. That's a fifth of the total points that the Suns had in this game, or actually close to a quarter of the points that the Suns had. So, like I said, they're not a fast team, the Suns. I don't think they're ever going to be, but they at least can at least punish teams when they make mistakes and be selective with when they do push that tempo, and I think we've seen them do a better job of that lately. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. Ben will be back tomorrow. We'll talk about the latest Charlotte Suns trade rumors. We just talked about a whole game that these teams played. Now we get to talk about them apparently wanting to make a deal. What is the latest? Does it make sense? Does it change the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes? All that we will get to tomorrow. So enjoy this win on a winning Monday. Enjoy your Monday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.